Well, I think the thing that I'm most proud of, basically, was being able to set up a system for providing services to patients who had problems with genetic and disorders in their children, and setting up a clinic to provide advice to individuals at risk, couples at risk of having an abnormal child, about the risks in future and what we might do about them. And of course, also many people came along and said, look, we have these abnormal children, could you please look at their chromosomes and see if we can find a diagnosis in an abnormal chromosome. So quite a lot of our work was setting up a chromosome diagnostic service and providing these diagnoses for families who had abnormally children with disabilities. Yeah. So at that point I should have said that in the United States I'd set up the first cytogenetics, the first chromosome clinic. That was in 1959. I set up the first diagnostic clinic in the United States for chromosome abnormalities. And that meant that we were lots of patients were referred with chromosome abnormalities, or the potential chromosome abnormalities, for diagnosis to our clinic. And in Johns Hopkins Hospital, where I was, there was a wonderful pediatric endocrinologist called Dr. Lawson Wilkins, and he's a pioneer in pediatric endocrinology. And he had a particular interest in children with ambiguous sexual development. And so he referred his patients, he was happy to refer his patients, or his blood samples from his patients, to my little diagnostic lab to see if they had chromosome abnormalities. And with that material, I was able to collect many cases of patients with Turner syndrome and with ambiguous genitalia, in which it was possible to determine what type of chromosome abnormality, what type of particular of X chromosome or Y chromosome abnormality they had. And out of that grew a research conclusion which was very valuable, which was that those patients that had lost the short arm of the X chromosome developed the full-blown Turner syndrome with infertility and short stature and various malformations. And those that had lost the lower part of the X chromosome were not short in stature, were infertile, were not short in stature, did not have the features of Turner syndrome. And so from that, we were able to come to the conclusion that the things that matter for Turner syndrome must be in the short arm of the X chromosome. And of course, individuals that have, I should explain that most patients with Turner syndrome, as my audience will know, have a single X chromosome and no other chromosome. They don't have a Y chromosome, and they don't have two X's, they have one X. But individuals with a full-blown Turner syndrome with only one X chromosome were short in stature and had these multiple malformations. But I thought to myself that but males have only got one X chromosome, and so they don't have any of these features. So there must be something on the Y chromosome that stopped these individuals, that stopped males from getting Turner syndrome. And so my idea was that there were genes that were expressed on the X chromosome that had copies on the Y chromosome that had the same function. They were expressed on both the X and the Y chromosome and prevented Turner syndrome. Therefore, Turner syndrome was due to haploinsufficiency of genes on the X chromosome, and that mapped the Turner genes to the short arm of the chromosome X and its corresponding region on the Y chromosome. So that was a bit of science that came into it. But when I came back to the United Kingdom, back to Glasgow in 1961, I was offered jobs in America at the time, but as I said, I was going to come back to Glasgow when I left, and my idea was that I would try and introduce medical genetics to medical practice in Glasgow, and that was my kind of aim, as well as doing some research, continuing the research that I was doing. So it's been a wonderful experience for me to see the period change from where genetics played no part in medicine to where genetics is the actual basis of medicine, is the fundamental science that's underlining all of medicine. So that's been a wonderful journey for me, and I guess I'm very happy that I happened to be involved. But you asked me what was the most important thing, I think. The most important for me, because I was trained as a doctor, the most important thing for me was to actually be able to provide these services for people who needed them. I guess I think that's probably the most important thing that I was involved in.